Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Councillor Fuller. It's very good to see you, Donna. It really is. Good morning. Welcome to the annual meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority. My name, apparently, is David Hopkins. I am the Vice Chairman of the authority. Although members of the public are able to attend and observe in person, the meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the authority's YouTube channel after the meeting. The first item of business is the election of chairman. I will now ask Graham Britton to ask for nominations for chairman for 2023-24.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Are there any nominations for the position of chairman for the year 23-24?
Could I propose Simon Mouse, please? Councillor Simon.
Is there a seconder?
I'll be happy to.
Are there any other nominations? There being no other nominations, I confirm that Councillor Rouse is duly elected as chairman by signing consent.
37 seconds, lads.
Not quick enough.
Congratulations.
Thank you, members, and honoured to be chairman again for another year. Looking forward to the year ahead. Can I also extend my welcome to Councillor Fuller? Good to have you on the authority. I know you already do a lot of work with Blue Light Hub here in your ward, so we're looking forward to you on the authority. So the next item of business is the appointment of vice chairman. So I'll ask Graham Britton to ask for nominations.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any nominations for the position of Vice Chairman for the year 23-24?
So I'd like to propose Councillor David Hopkins.
Is there a seconder for that nomination?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Councillor Hopkins, thank you.
Are there any other nominations? There being no other seconded nominations, I can confirm that Councillor Hopkins is duly elected as Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, item number 3, apologies for absence.
Councillors Chapel, Christensen, Hall and Lambert.
And I think we have apologies for lateness from Councillor.
We do, yeah.
So item number 4, minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Fire Authority held on the 28th of April. So any questions as to accuracy? Happy to approve. Approve. Thank you. So moving on to matters arising from the previous meeting. So obviously that was that meeting was entirely around values and culture in fire and rescue services. Just a couple of things that happened since. So the head of human resources has met with Councillor Waite, and they've discussed various options of raising whistleblowing concerns, such as texting and apps. The HR Advisory and Development Manager will also consult the Occupational Health Committee regarding this. The Chief Fire Officer and Chairman were to write to HMI CFRS giving feedback on what had been discussed in the action plan. This was included in the strategic brief, and we also included in our discussions with the Inspectorate as part of the evidence pack that was provided. So that was covered off through that. And then the final action is the Chief Fire Officer to consider with the Chairman how to keep the MPs. And by that, it should actually, I think, also read local members, because I think we agreed to keep both MPs and local members. To date, my proposal on that is that following today's discussion, we do a further update on progress on the action plan to both members of Parliament and to local members of Buckinghamshire and Keynes. So item number 6 is disclosure of interest. Are there any pecuniary interests that members want to declare? Around, so no. Thank you very much. Which moves us on to Chairman's announcements. So I've got 4 Chairman's announcements to read. So the first announcement to share is that I'm pleased to say that in May we completed the sale of the Great Holm Fire Station. So that is now complete and the site is no longer under our control or responsibility. So congratulations to officers on completing that process. I know it wasn't always the smoothest process to go through. Second item is just to update members on where we are with our whole-time firefighter numbers. So officers are currently working on the whole-time cohort 10 campaign. That's currently at interview stage. There have been 167 applications received, 105 applications shortlisted and sent a pre-assessment link. 82 have been invited to the Bleep and Behaviour Workshop. 51 have been invited to role-related tests. and 42 have been invited for the interview presentation stage. 18 candidates will be offered employment and will commence on the 27th of September 2023. And the service will be able to create a pool of candidates should any of the 18 leave the course unexpectedly. We've also had 9 firefighter transferees who commenced on the 5th of June and will attend a 3-week conversion course with training school. All these recruitment activities are continuing to show the increase in numbers on establishment, and members will know that reaching our whole-time firefighter numbers was one of our key priorities for the year that's passed. The workforce planning group are meeting monthly to ensure the global target of 300 is met. I also know that members attended the apprentices pass out ceremony 2 weeks ago now, I think it was, which I was with the boat team on the 10th at the time, so I couldn't join, but I hear that went very well. So that was, again, really great to see. And the Chief Fire Officer just updated me coming into the meeting on today's numbers, which I thought would be just worth sharing with members. So as of today's date, we are currently sitting with 293 whole-time firefighters against our 300 target, and on the current run rate we expect to be at 312 by September. So again, if we just step back a year and you think, I think we were at 265 from memory last year, so that's a fantastic progress in recruitment of the whole-time firefighters that we need, and so again, congratulations to officers on that progress. Next item I wanted to announce is to pass on congratulations from me and from the authority to Councillor Mahbub Hussain, who achieved 20 years as a Justice of the Peace. Actually, it was last year, but you celebrated it last week. And the Chief Fire Officer, Deputy Director of Finance and Assets, and I were delighted to attend an event which celebrated this fantastic achievement. So from all of us, many congratulations.
Thank you.
The other item I want to share with members is that the authority had an urgent request from the Home Office to supply critical water safety equipment to Ukraine to support the rescue efforts following on from the Kakhovka dam incident. And I'm pleased and proud to report that the authority supplied a wide range of equipment. I don't know if you just want to perhaps share what some of that equipment was, who's best placed to do that?
Yeah, Simon. There was three light portable pumps. There was a lot of dry suits, personal flotation devices, gloves, over boots, oars, wading poles. Yeah, so it was a full range of water rescue equipment. But the light portable pumps were the main thing that they needed. And we managed to get 3 of those that were still serviceable out to them.
Thank you. That's really, really good to hear. And I assume we can now share publicly doing that, because I know originally it was confidential that we were doing that, but it was good to see. So the final announcement, I'm afraid, is on less good news. It's with deep regret and personal sadness that we share the news of the tragic and sudden death of our friend and colleague, Dave Evans. Dave was a popular and valued employee dedicated to serving the community within Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. He started his fire service career in 2010 as an on-call firefighter based at Aylesbury, where he spent 5 years as an operational crew commander before more recently becoming one of the service's blue light driving instructors. Dave will be missed by everyone who knew him, and our heartfelt sympathies with his family, friends and colleagues who need time to grieve at this difficult time. So could I ask everybody present to stand for a minute's silence in honour of Dave? Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, petitions and standing order SOA6.
None received.
Thank you. And item number 9, questions in accordance with standing order SOA7.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Membership of the authority. So the recommendations to the authority to approve are on page 5, and therefore no change. Anything you want to add?
No, Chairman, only members will note the substitution of the Keynes Council of Councillor Mahendran for Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. Members happy to note?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moves us on to item number 11, committee matters. Recommendations for the authority to approve on page 6 to note. And I'll ask Graham Britton to read the group leaders' nominations for the Executive and Overview and Audit Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. First, may I thank the group leaders of the Lib Dems and the Labour parties for agreeing that split between the two committees. So in terms of the Conservative appointments onto the Executive Committee, they are as follows. Councillors Hall, Hopkins, McLean, Rouse and Walsh. And to its 6 seats on the Overview and Audit Committee, there are Councillors Ado, Bagg, Harold, Chapel, OBE, Hussain and Wade. The Liberal Democrat group appointments to its 2 seats on the Executive Committee are as follows. Councillors Christensen and Lambert, and to its 1 seat on the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillor Exon. Finally, the Labour group appointments to its 1 seat on the Executive Committee is Councillor Darlington, and to its 2 seats on the Overview and Audit Committee are Councillors Fuller and Stutchbury.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 12, calendar of meetings to note on pages 7 and 8. Take those as noted. That moves us now on to item number 13, appointment of representatives to outside bodies. That's on page 8, so I'll hand over to Graham Britton to read through the nominations.
Thank you, Chairman. The outside bodies are listed there at the top of page 8. I've had the following nominations, which I propose that the meeting take on block, and they are as follows. To the Local Government Association and Annual Conference, I've so far received 2 nominations. That's David Hopkins and Matthew Walsh. The Local Government Association Bar Commission, I've got Councillor Rouse, and the Standing Deputy is David Hopkins. To the Local Government Association Annual Fire Conference, Councillor Simon Rouse and David Hopkins. To the Thames Valley Fire Control Joint Committee, Councillor Simon Rouse and Matthew Walsh. And as substitutes onto that Joint Committee, Keith McLean and Gary Hall. I should first ask if there are any other proposals for any of those positions. Can I have a seconder for those proposals? There being no other seconded nominations, those appointments are duly made, Chairman.
Thank you. Moves us on to item number 14, lead member responsibilities. That's set out on page 9. And also on page 8, actually. Recommendations are for us to approve them and then to consider the allocation of lead member responsibilities and appoint members to these roles. So before I move to nominations of eligible members, any comments? People happy with the roles set out, the same as last year? So that's a yes. Hello, Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. If I take these individually, can I have a nomination for the position of Service Delivery, Protection and Collaboration?
Council.
Can I have a seconder? Are there any other nominations for the position of lead member they must be from the Executive Committee, any for lead member for the position of Service Delivery, Protection and Collaboration? Being no other nominations, Chairman, you're appointed into that position. And the second position of lead member is People, Equality, Diversity and Assurance. And again, a nomination from a member of the Executive Committee.
Proposed Councillor Gary Hall.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations for that position? There being none, Councillor Hall is appointed into that position, Chairman. The third lead member position is a member from the Executive Committee to be appointed into the role of Finance and Assets, Information Security and IT. Can I have a nomination, please?
I'd like to propose Councillor Walsh.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for that position? There being none, Chairman, Councillor Walsh is appointed into that role. And the final position for lead member from the Executive Committee is the role of Health and Safety and Corporate Risk. Can I have a nomination, please?
I'd like to propose Councillor McLean.
Can I have a second? Are there any other nominations for that position? There being none, Councillor McLean is duly appointed into that position, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item number 15. 2020 to 25 corporate plan, year 3 progress review and year 4 update. So this paper sets out progress that we're making on the corporate plan and steps for the year ahead. I won't say any more on that. I'll hand over to Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Yes, this is a review of progress over the third year of the 5-year corporate plan that the authority approved at its annual meeting back in June 2020. It also sets out the programme for the remaining 2 years of the plan through to the end of March 2025. Progress made during the second year and a year 3 refresh were approved by the authority in June and October of last year, respectively. In light of progress made, we've taken the opportunity to refresh the programme of activity that will be undertaken over the remaining 2 years of the plan in pursuit of our strategic objectives. Since you last saw it, the plan has been updated to align with the medium-term financial plan approved by the authority at the February meeting. That's summarised at page 31 of your papers. We've also included 2 new work streams relating to readiness to deal with legislative and regulatory change, but also to develop the services culture, the latter of which is linked to the BFRS values and cultural report, which was considered the authority's extraordinary meeting at the end of April. These new items are shown at pages 53 and 45 respectively. The review of progress in year 3 and the programme for years 4 and 5 is set out in section 8 of the plan, pages 37 to 48 of your packs. A summary of projects by status is at page 37, which you will have seen that 3 items have been completed and all streamed into business as usual activities, specifically items SO 1.2, which related to the safety centre, SO 1.3 around dealing with collaboration with partners in relation to risk information and methodologies, and then finally SO 3.9, which is the midterm review of the current 2020 to 25 public safety plan. We have no items at red rag status, which is good news because obviously if they were, it would be delivered on track. The majority, 19 of them, are green, which means that they are on track, and with only 5 at amber, which means they're a little off track, but are nonetheless recoverable within the lifetime of our plan. That is everything I wanted to draw your attention to, so I'll now hand back to the Chairman for any comments or questions that members may have.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Batchbury.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank very much for the thorough history of the plan. Also, very particularly because the environment and climate action plan in it, as we discussed the previous year, worked out very nicely with Emily proposed, and that is now sort of makes a difference in the work done. It's very timely. I like to recommend my thanks to the fire service for the support they gave to North Buckingham over the recent days. We were in many of the villages I represent and the town, we were hit quite badly, as you know, by a storm, and have it on the plan. It's timely and it's important because no one could anticipate the amount of rain in such a short period of time. And I must say, it's always good to say that the comments about the fire authority on social media were nothing but positive, and people were oozing their thanks for the people turning out and supporting us throughout that thing, and that is their gratitude to firefighters and what they do in the community, and it shows tenfold in what I saw on social media. As a dyslexic, I chose not to engage in it because I didn't think it was from the certain things that what it said. I'd like to report those thanks to the assistance you gave.
Thank you. Any other questions? Points on corporate plan, Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking through the report. Thank you very much, Stuart and colleagues, for producing it. What we have on page 20/47, i.e. the dual memory system, we've got SE 2.8 review and the Bartolo Oil Service Resilience Business Continuity. I'd be grateful for an update on the disaster recovery plans for business continuity, and I have pre-warned officers of the question, so I'll direct that over to Anne-Marie, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yep.
So during COVID, we held off completing any business continuity testing, but actually we were able to put our business continuity plans into practice. We do complete penetration testings in line with our ICT strategy, and we ensure our systems remain secure. We more recently completed an external server health check that was positive. Now we've migrated our wide area and local area network. We're going to work with Buckinghamshire Council and our business continuity manager to build an action and testing plan that includes both ICT and our broader elements. I'm happy to go into further details outside of this meeting.
Any other questions? Okay, so because I'm always skeptical when I get a report full of lots of green, can I just test a little bit the two items that we've got amber. So probably slightly less time on the first one, because we're going to get to that in a bit more detail in a bit. But what is it that's driving the amber on the culture and values work, and what assurance can you give us that that is going to be tracking to green and not to red? And then the second item, which is just the improvements in records management, which I recall we had quite an extensive discussion at during the budget process. Just a bit more detail on what we're doing there and what the plan is to get that on track for green and completion within the corporate plans period. So I don't think it's best place to take those two.
And I think on culture.
Yeah, so on the culture one, I mean, as I'm about to present the report, and you'll see the progress that's been made. I think it wasn't kind of put as green because there is still kind of work to be done, but as far as I'm concerned, we are, moving forward on that. And it, it certainly isn't that we're slipping into red. We have reviewed all of the dates across the service, that kind of looked at the governance and everything. So it's amber at the minute, but I would expect it to be green in the future.
Okay, thank you. You want to
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This falls with me. I can report that we have engaged with an external provider. It happens to be Buckinghamshire Council. I've been in dialogue with their data protection officer and some members of their information security team, and they're currently engaged in delivering or scoping out a training package, which I am going to get approval through from our training support group for that to be rolled out. So it's just pending the construction of the training package before that's rolled out to cohort of staff within the organisation that are going to monitor and do the housekeeping on the records management.
From memory, and I'm doing this a bit from memory, so if I'm wrong, just tell me. But the reason this came up was when we were reviewing the investment required in the IT infrastructure. And one of the reasons why that investment was as high was because some of the records management that required just wasn't, we got a significant volume of data that required to hold. So how are those two bits of work being aligned to make sure that over the medium term we're able to drive down some of the IT hosting costs that we've got?
Yeah, the origins for this actually predate that scrutiny of the budget in terms of data storage, but they are in a way related. So it was quite fortuitous in fact that the genesis of this was an audit, an internal audit about the records management. But as you say, a lot of our data is held electronically, and it does have a huge impact on the data storage, the cost, and also the carbon footprint of everything that goes into the cloud. So I'm hoping to align the two in terms of, if we get the good records management, data minimisation, although it's a factor in terms of GDPR, it also is a factor in running the business and making sure that we only store what's necessary for as long as necessary in the right place. So they are going to align. That's my intention.
Thank you. Okay, so members are being asked to approve the 2025 corporate progress review and update. We have to do so. Thank you very much. Moves us on to quality, diversity and inclusion objectives. So in Councillor Hall's absence, so this, I'll introduce it. So this paper sets out our progress on our ED&I objectives, and also includes some updates to those objectives for the year ahead. Obviously, this is also, again, quite inextricably linked to some of the culture and value discussion that we'll have. So really important sections. So I'll hand over to our senior Annie, who will take us through this.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the ED&I objectives 2020 to 2025 year 3 update. So this report and appendices are to update our progress made on ED&I and the objectives. Themes for 2023 set out against our agreed objectives and been amended to ensure the refreshed corporate plan priorities and the inspection report recommendations and learning are aligned with it. Cross-reference the recommendations from both the Independent Culture Review of London Fire Brigade and most recently the Inspectorate Values and Culture Fire and Rescue Services. Separate reports have been presented to the Executive Committee and Fire Authority. So page 57, Appendix 1, introduces the statutory duties outlined by the prevailing legislation and the overarching objectives. Appendix 2 shows a summary of the ED&I headlines and what's been achieved in 22 and 23. I'll just draw attention to some of them. So, for example, Change 100 internship. We have a meeting on Friday with the resource management team and Change 100 with a view to the person starting with us at the beginning of July. On the Change 100 scheme. The equality impact assessments, since all the review and consultation and implementation, we now have over 25 equality impact assessments which have been completed to date, and it's fully embedded into the governance. Individual training toolkits, for example, hidden disabilities, sign language and ED&I. The ED&I packages have now been reassigned to engage with the whole workforce and that they are now mandatory every year. Community engagement to increase the diversity of the service. So there's a lot of areas that we've been involved with: the National Apprenticeship Scheme, National Careers Transitions with Armed Forces, Have a Go events, visits to local mosques for recruitment and community engagement, and Eid in the Park. And there is a toolkit that has been established that can be used for all of these events. And as the ED&I group, we are planning for events moving forward. For example, ED&I, the Eid in the Park event on the at the end of June. As a result of the recruitment activities, the applicant diversity has increased. So from 2016 to 2023, for example, female employees have increased by 4.6%. So what we've tried to do is we are running, we're using the data that we have to see the difference that we've made. And that, again, is one of the ED&I objectives. The collection of equality data from our workforce is essential in order that we can focus our resources. So that's a big bit of work that's been carried out. And I don't think there was quite a lot on there. I wasn't planning to go through all of them. And the only final one I was going to talk about was the DBS work that we've done, where there's 339 DBSs have been undertaken to date, and we have been through the consultation for the DBS procedure. So Appendix 3 illustrates ED&I workforce data in the form of charts in comparison to the latest census data from 21 for the population of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. The service has reviewed the way we collect to present our data, and this has been refreshed and is captured in the latest data report. So Appendix 4 shows the ED&I objectives. So these are set out against themes. So there's an activity, an overarching objective. Sorry, they're on page 75. So they can be effectively measured and reported against in the future. So the overarching themes are leadership, community engagement, neurodiversity, recruitment and facilities and welfare provision. And at every ED&I meeting, the progress is updated. We have a spreadsheet, a plan that we've come work on. So the recommendations, it's recommended that the contents of the report, the introduction, ED&I Appendix 1, the headlines in Appendix 2, and the ED&I workforce data in Appendix 3 be noted, and the revised ED&I objectives in Appendix 4 be approved. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Darlington.
So there's so much information in here and we can't forget everything, but it was good to see what we've been mentioning in about the events. I would say do consider we've got India Day coming up in Milton Keynes. There's about 8,000 people. There's often a presence from the fire service, but not the kind of recruitment activity that you're talking about. Pride obviously is enormous in Milton Keynes as well. And there's an African Diaspora Day as well that is very, very well attended. So I would just say don't forget the Milton Keynes events. The one I wanted to pick up on was the theme around facilities and welfare provision. So we've had a lot of talk about adapting some of the facilities in terms of changing rooms, showers, others.
There's no timeline put against this. We do have an idea of when we would be doing the capital works that have already been identified. We have no, I've been talking about it for about a year now. But it'd be good to know when that might happen.
So work has already started.
Oh, it has, okay.
Yes, some work has started. The plan is to look across all of our estates and actually say, what do we need at all of it throughout to make sure that we're being consistent. We do have an ED&I budget, which is £25,000 a year. As if, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to say, there has been work that's been carried out, for example, to High Wycombe on kind of air conditioning, big refresh. There's been work that's been carried out at West Ashlands on kind of locks to the changing rooms for male and the female, and kind of the shower facilities. For example, on quarters, we've got a new door which literally went in kind of last week. So that kind of opens kind of outward, so you literally mark in and go out.
James, just to add to that, we've done snippets as alluded to. What we're trying to do in the background is we're working closely with the property manager and actually the IT manager as well to sit down and see what a standard fire station should look like. So have a standardization process. There's no point trying to skew the plan kind of firefight and do little snippets. So we're working closely with the property manager to understand exactly what each fire station should look like in terms of facilities, and then look at what's achievable and then report back on that in terms of how we're going to try and make those changes. Now, some of it we will try and do. Obviously, £25,000 doesn't get you a lot in terms of doing that, but if from that piece of work there's quite a lot that needs to be done and it's achievable, we then look to build that into our financial medium-term financial plan. At present, property obviously focus on the condition survey, but we are putting a lot more emphasis on facilities and actually invited the property manager now to attend the EDI group and report back to us in terms of how we're going to push this forward. So we are actively now working more closely with property to try and make these changes.
I would definitely be interested in seeing that list of what's needed, what's in the train, what's been done. I don't know if the rest of the board will, but if they are, then maybe we can distribute it as an additional board paper, but if not, just let them. So we have visibility of that. We'd be quite interested just to see what we're doing.
Yes, so just let's take that as an action to circulate around the authority. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. I was interested in the fact that we still have the necessity to discuss equal pay. That equal pay came in 1970. Later, Barbara Castle was a resident of Buckinghamshire and may not know. You to get to the council one by a good friend of mine, ready to never interview. And I would think she'd be encouraged that they're trying to move towards a target which was set in 1970 of equal pay, and in 2023. I think reassurance that how we are going to hit that target, it is important that there is a policy. I also know, thinking in the paper, which is a good paper, around the equality and diversity, our need to meet the Equality Act, and I need to meet the really cited the report they wisely. I also know, which we captured don't open on paper. I went through some of the attachments the other day, and I can't check the internet here to pull out the attachments, but digging back. Some of it, of course, links to the London Fire Brigade report and the influence on that and the blend of the Tower recommendations around diversity in the way that fire services act in accordance with best practice. So I hope those two things you're able to address those. I know they're different from diversity because you have got special characteristics and especially stuff in here, which is probably me. But in the report, are you able to give me some update on where you think we are on the appointments pay and where we will be on the report to do with the findings with the regular inquiry to all these things? I think they are key in how we actually go forward and how we meet your very good paper around the actual points that you're trying to address.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Just before you answer, can I just make sure that we're all being really clear about what we're talking about here? So I think that you're referring to the Equal Pay Act, but I think what actually we're discussing is the gender pay gap reporting. And I think that's a really important distinction, because if we are in breach of the Equal Pay Act, I'd quite like to know. And I don't think we are. So I just think it's really important we're precise over that. So I think what you're referring to, Councillor Stutchbury, is the gender pay gap reporting. So which we can update on. Is that what you're referring to?
Can be wise in bringing up what equal pay act, which Article 7 in pay gap, it's the base in 97, where it used to be. It's a fact, it's a piece of legislation.
Yeah.
I wasn't implying that we're not meeting it. I was implying that our aspirations is to hit that target, which was set some time ago, and which report suggested was there.
Right. Okay. It's just really important because the Equal Pay Act, which I'm very familiar with, it is a legal obligation to me. So if you can cover gender pay gap.
Yes, so in terms of the gender pay, so basically we report on our gender pay every year. We've got an action plan in place. In terms of the equality, equal pay, we had an audit that was carried out in 2020 that showed, that we were doing everything that we needed to, and that there weren't any equal pay issues. So the gender pay, we are going to be looking at ethnicity pay kind of moving forward. So that's why we're doing a lot of work on our data to make sure that we've got ethnicity in there as well. So there is work that we do on a yearly basis in terms of the gender pay, the equal pay, and the audit showed that we didn't capture an equal pay issue. We've got pay scales, got operational for support, we've got kind of everything in place.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Just to confirm, because I think we covered this at a previous meeting, we've agreed with doing the race disparity as well, haven't we?
Yeah, the ethnicity, yes. So we do the gender pay at the minute, and we're going to be doing the ethnicity as well.
Great. And sorry, that's the second question from Councillor Stutchbury. Yeah, who's going to cover that? Can we cover that?
What was the
Your question on Grenfell.
My recommendations in the Grenfell report. How we.
I didn't think it would be difficult.
No, since the.
Thank you.
So from the Grenfell report, when we get the recommendations, we will then pick up on in terms of them and incorporate them into our policies and procedures. Do that on a regular basis on all the reports that we receive. Although it's not actually in here, would you like further information on?
Well, we do. So from memory, we bring regular updates on our progress on the Grenfell report, don't we? So let's just make sure when that's next due, we cover that specific item in it. Sorry.
Grenfell, the action plan sets with my directorate. We have, as the chairman rightly said, we've been bringing regular updates. We don't bring them to every meeting. Our plan in the next, and we've got them for the future plans. I think not, where we were with all the recommendations within that will be done where we are, but then also start to introduce reporting. And
I think, sorry, Councillor Stutchbury, and I think from just a reminder that members speak once under the standing orders, and just to chat. I think again in the previous meeting we agreed that we were going to look to try and integrate the recommendations and actions from Manchester, Grenfell into a single. Is that right?
Yes, they are. They all sit within Operational Assurance Improvement Plan or ARP, which goes up through PMB and then.
Right. So I think Councillor Stutchbury's. I should note actually that it's also the anniversary of Grenfell today. So I think it probably would make sense because I think it has been a while if we could bring that to the September authority meeting and let's have a proper review, and then that will enable Councillor Stutchbury to just look at progress on those items as well. Good. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on Councillor Dine's excellent point about facilities and welfare provision. Also, the thing that Ashley touched on, which was there's a budget of 25k. And you said yourself, which isn't very much. I want the assurance that once we spend 25k, we're not going to come to a grinding halt, that there will be an ongoing work programme and that money will be found to make sure that work is included. Because I'd hate us to get to August to say we can't do any more now until April. I know that wouldn't be the case, but I just want to make sure that is absolutely confirmed.
Well, yes, I was going to reassure you that is the case. And also there's a capital programme for other property works. And when we do any work on any property, we will always consider EDI implications as part of any regular planned work as well. So just that 25k, if anything we do on property, we'll consider how we enhance EDI.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? In which case, can I just ask? So, at the Fire Commission on Friday, there was a quite extensive session on the challenges around on-call firefighter recruitment. And one of the things that's quite interesting in the data are the challenges around particularly gender in on-call firefighters. So given that's an important recruitment route for us as well into whole time, I'd just be interested in what work are we intending to do as part of our overall driving of on-call firefighter recruitment, to use that also to just try and reach out into different recruitment pools, both gender, ethnic diversity, and other areas, just because it strikes me that there are things potentially to learn from that as well that feed into our whole time recruitment. And then secondly, and I recognise that it's partly because the numbers are so can be skewed quite a lot, but it's striking again on the whole time that we appear to have made good progress in ethnic diversity, but we've seen a further drop in gender diversity on our whole time recruitment. So again, can you just take us through what we're learning, what we could be doing differently to try and particularly improve the gender diversity of our whole time recruitment?
Okay, so in terms of kind of the gender challenges, so the last, the cohort that just to go through that have just been selected, so of the 18, there's 4 females. So every time we recruit, we are looking to be as reflective of our community as possible. And what we do is we look at, we run kind of reports on all of the different areas of the application process. So who applies, the different dropout rates, is there anything that we can do in terms of any of the selection procedures, the role-related testing. So we've made kind of differences over every cohort. We've installed kind of ladders in 3 different areas in the county for our role-related testing. We're about to do some work on our VO2 max. We've done some other work on our have a go days. So in the past we've had in specific areas of female only have a go days. We combine them, the on call and the whole time. Sometimes we have them separate. So every campaign we have for like the whole time and the on call, we try and look at actually what we learned from this that we can do next and for the next time. So for example, a few years ago we didn't have a behaviour workshop. So yes, that's not to do with kind of different protected characteristics, but it's about the kind of people that we want to kind of work for the service to have the diversity of thought. So we're trying to improve those all the time. And as we do that, we take every change that we take that through our business transformation board, so that we do have the kind of the scrutiny from other people saying, actually, are we thinking about everything? Are we covering everything? So in terms of so we do the impact on diversity. So recently we've run a report and just said females have gone up over the years. So we're trying to look at all different kind of points, not just when we're recruiting people in, but it's also the other processes as well. There is still more work to be done. That's why we try to do the work on the data as well, get people to update their data, people that work for us already, so that we can look at where to focus. The South Asian community is where we were focusing. So going to Eden the Park, going to the mosques, that was a decision that was made at the strategic recruitment board to say, actually, that's going to be our area of focus. It doesn't mean that we're not looking to recruit females or from any of the other protected characteristics, but attend Pride and High Wycombe and MK and all of these other things. For example, I attended the first ladies mingle event a few weekends ago with the crew and people for protection as well. We're trying to go to as many different events as we can, and we're trying to have a kind of a toolkit that we can take just to try and get people engaged.
Okay. So anything on head on call?
And I think again on-call recruitment, we tie it in together. Well, we have been with the Have a Go days, where we're trying to attract people from who want to be on call and whole time as well. And it's engaging with our current on-call staff as well and understanding, because they're our best recruiters in many respects, because they live and work in those areas, and about how they can attract people. And just as an example, I was in Marlow yesterday, trying to look at how we can recruit more people in that particular area. So we just lost a couple. And it's about how we engage in those local communities, and any assistance, obviously, as members would be really helpful, because those areas as well. But it is around our comms and marketing team as well. They're developing different packages and different messages to go out to try and attract more people from different backgrounds, and especially the female background. But it is, trying to, sort of hit that bit around, where we can attract more female people from the on-call area, because it has been traditionally very, very difficult. There's that bit around we've looked at, sort of where kids become of school age and, mums could be a little bit freer during the day. That has caused us issues in the past where they've then got to be ready to go get kids from school and stuff. But it is that attraction piece and we're working really hard on it.
So just for, as we move into the next year, we've obviously good progress on whole time. I think it would be helpful if we could have a bit of a deeper dive on call, particularly, there's been a lot of NFCC activity on it and I've had the update of the commission. But perhaps when we do the update on the culture element, given the writing to local members across both authorities, if we can highlight in there the on-call areas that we're struggling to recruit in, or all on-call areas, and ask folks ideas and thoughts on how to do it, strikes me as a good loop through to both. That's right. Councillor Darlington.
Just to respond to Mick's point, Redbull, which is in Milton Keynes, has done an incredible job getting women in, and their PIP director was the first woman. People that sit at PIP and say, this is what we're doing, these are the cars we're using, and the first woman ever in Formula One, and they've done a pretty incredible job in a male dominated area. I'm just wondering if it's worth having a chat with them, and it's a program throughout both for women and particularly for men in understanding those barriers.
No, we've got contacts in Bristol, so no, absolutely.
They've done a very good job at making what is a dominated industry and attracting women to that in very senior professional roles. So then there might be, and it gives you an excuse to go renting.
Well, I need an excuse.
So just to pick up on that, actually, in terms of our service, we're one of the only services in the country. There are others, but actually one of the only services that allows the migration between on-call and whole time on a regular basis. That allows on-call firefighters to ride whole-time fire engines. There is that transition to be able to think. So there is a read across when we think about the equality and diversity within our own organisation between on-call and whole-time. And actually, there is something about recruiting people into the on-call for them to go into the whole-time as we move forward. It feels to me as though the focus for next year, we've done a lot on recruitment to go from 265 to hopefully 312 by September, bearing in mind that we lose approximately 3 people a month through retirement or leaving or whatever. So we've done loads of recruitment. It feels to me probably the next steps as we look forward, which should be a focus on call, not just whole-time recruitment as we move forward. And that's something I think we need to think about as we're planning forward. The other piece to pick up on though as well is this is a national problem. The National Joint Council, the NJC, have identified it with the employers and the rep bodies, and that will be a particular. I think that's going to be a national part. There's a national work stream identified in terms of on-call as well that we need to pick up on. But it feels to me there's a real opportunity with on-call as we move forward in the next 12 months.
Agreed. Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Just to answer a couple of things to the on-call aspect. As people know, I'm right at the north of the area. We have a Rosane fire station only. We tried very hard working with the community. Glad to see the numbers are up. We managed to get an article in a magazine that goes to 33,000 homes. So I'm sure some other members have got access to those, and I'm sure that the team will help write things and make visits. Another organisation, Milton Keynes, got a very high number of females in positions is Nifty Lift, where they have a great recruitment drive every year. I've got the details of the chap who runs it, so when they go and have a chat with them again. So they have been very successful from that, and also won lots of Queen's Awards, so I think they know the stuff. I think we've all got contacts. I'm sure we can all help as well. So if any people reach out to us, if you think we can help, I'm sure my colleagues would be delighted to throw away to them and workshop to like us and that.
Okay, thank you. So members are being asked to note the contents of the report and the appendices and appendices 1, 2 and 3. And we're being asked to approve the revised EDI objectives in Appendix 4. Are we happy to do that? Thank you. Moves on to item number 17, which is updates on our work in exploring our culture. So obviously we had a an extensive discussion on this at the extraordinary meeting at the end of April. So this gives us an update on the progress on the action plan. So over to Beth.
Thank you. Okay, so a report was presented to the Market Executive Committee, which showed our work to date and planned. This report is an update on the work to date. In March 23, the Inspectorate published the Values and Culture in Fire and Rescue Services report. An extraordinary fire authority meeting was held on the 28th of April 2023, where the Inspectorate recommendations were approved. We plan to combine the action plans from 2 reports and base them on the draft NFCC Culture Action Plan. Updates on progress will be presented in due course. So on page 87, Appendix 1, shows an updated version of our work to date and planned, and that shows 21 areas. And they have been kind of put into all the different colours. So you've got blue is complete and now forms part of business as usual. Green is complete, amber is in progress, and red is not started. So all of the information, all of the progress updates and everything is in there. Appendix 2 on page 95 shows the DBS letter that was sent to the Inspectorate in March. And I referred to that earlier as well, in terms of all the work that we've done on DBS and how we're leading in that area. Page 101, Appendix 3 shows the equality impact assessment. And page 109, Appendix 4, shows the updated Inspectorate Values and Culture in Fire and Rescue Service recommendations and update. There are 35 areas and they are colour-coded as well. The recommendations that the work carried out to date and the planned work in respect of exploring our culture be noted. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Stuttery.
Thank you for the report. This obviously I read it now. It is. I'm pleased that mine's included considering the report, which is important that gave very useful. Also, very pleased that on 16 that you are going to bring forward a review on the only side of this in the red. And also note that it's really good to see 20, which is that you are looking at studying and making sure that it's an issue. And 1 and 2, which are at the top here, you know, are natural, which we talked about in the previous item, which is equality and diversity. That equality and understanding of equality and diversity, we wouldn't be where we are. And the draft communication for the employees, well, of course, about 9, you won't get a draft on the best way to draft communications as well as trade union through that which you achieve. I think it's a very good report. Just one question out of that is, how do you weight the red in it? It's unfair that it's in red considering all the other work done. How do you weight red about digital values and ensuring code repetitive? It could be something that we're waiting for other reports. We talked about the chair mentioned the anniversary of our day, and we also wait for the Greater London report to come out and make recommendations. It could be white in the red that everything is done. If it is, it tell me I'm wrong and I'm right.
Yeah, so 16, the red, I've just put it to red because it hasn't started. So I didn't want to say that it was in progress or that it was complete. I mean, it's not behind target. It's due to start in quarter 2 or quarter 3. It's just the colour coding so that it was clear. I just wanted to be as honest as we could about where we were with it.
I just thought the red was a bit.
Yeah, we haven't started
it up more than what it really is.
It's fair. It's fair.
We're doing it.
Thank you.
It's quite a different colour. Councillor Darlington.
I was just going to reiterate some of my points from the other meeting that we had on this, which was, I mean, it's great to see the progress. I appreciate that this is being written because it's in response to the report. But if we're not integrating this stuff in the previous report, actually it can't be standalone. So if ED&I is not part of our values and our culture, which is what we're reviewing here, And I don't see that featured in that. In particular, we talked about the links between the Speak Up campaign and the White Ribbon campaign, but there are other things that you could pull out of here. So I guess I'm still concerned that we're looking at them in two silos and actually they're complementary to each other. And I know it's probably all in your head about how they read across and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not sure it's helpful for the board to see them as two separate things.
Maria, I think you're going to.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's been our focus is how do we bring things together in a much more, I think we've reacted in the right way to make sure we're bringing the right updates. So and that's been our initial exploring the culture report, which was based on the London report. Then the second report that was around HMI, and then we've got PDI injections, and we've got our general people strategy. So we are trying to pull them into one more plan. It's not only easy to understand, but it's also easy for us to market and share with our staff. Because at the moment, this isn't very staff friendly in terms of its approach. So it isn't really working. So the next update should be more focused on practice.
Thank you. Any other questions before I dive in? Okay, can I take us to the so I don't know, it might be appendix 3 before the HMI values and culture lot. So I just want to check because I think my read of this is that we're being overly hard on ourselves, or you're being overly hard on yourselves on the off-track ones. So because which obviously what draws attention. So if we just look at slightly, so my things are printed out different ways and different styles, so it might look a bit strange to go through it. So number 4, where you've marked it as off track and moved due date to the 1st of January 24. My read of the reason for that, I just want to test this, is because you haven't yet concluded what to do with the professional standards function. But the HMI report wasn't requiring a professional standards function by the 1st of June. It was requiring that chief fire officers assure themselves on how concerns are being raised. So I just want to be really clear, because this is important. Have you assured yourself against that 1st of June target? And is the off track because of the work we're doing in the professional standards function, in which case it feels to me like that just needs to be more clearly articulated, because you are on track to the HMI requirement. Is that the right read?
Yes, it is. Am I assured? The things that are going on in the organisation, I get to know about them all at various stages. Am I assured that if people come forward, am I assured that we deal with them? Yes, I am. Am I assured that we deal with them in an appropriate way? Yes, I am. And we follow up over various things. So in terms of that piece, for what we know about, and you can't be assured about things you don't know about, I am assured, as a chief fire officer, I am assured. Your point about the professional standards function is right. There are discussions that have been ongoing and continue to be ongoing. Looked at Thames Valley. We've also had I've also had discussions with Bedfordshire and Northamptonshire about professional standards function as an example. So we've looked at it. So conversations are going on about that. Well, you're right in terms of separating the two things out.
So my suggestion is that just probably needs to, there might be 2 of the others in a second, that phase 1 of that action is complete on time. The next phase, you're in progress rather than off track, and you've set yourself a target for the 1st of Jan. Sorry.
The reason I put it off track is to highlight it's off track, the new dates. We will sign up to that new date, and then that's what we come back and so the next time we report it wouldn't be off track, it would be in progress. So normally we highlight the fact that it's off track, show that we want to extend the date out. That was the reason for showing it in that way.
But you're on track against the core requirement by the 1st of June. So that's what I'm hearing. We completed it.
Yes, the other thing to bear in mind is that when HMIC look at things like this, they asked to evidence it. So whilst we've had a number of conversations, they don't want to say, here's a report that says how we've considered it, what have we done, and how we take it. We don't have anything.
Okay, so that's a different answer to the one I think you've just given me. So what can we just, this is important, we're really clear on this.
Yes.
How are we going to evidence being sure?
So how do I evidence that I know about things? Well, for example, I have a discussion with the lead for HMIC FRS, Matt Parr, on a regular basis about all the cases that are available. In terms of evidencing it to HMIC FRS, that is my one way through. When people come forward with complaints or experiences which are not right, there is obviously confidentiality is key for people to come forward. So it's really, really difficult for me in my position to be able to provide evidence more broadly to HMIC-FRS about this or that or the other. We have people coming forward who say, please, I do not want anybody to know, but this is what's happened to me. And we deal with them issues. We deal with them issues. I can guarantee we do deal with them issues. So it's really difficult to evidence that in the public domain. But I can assure you that actually every single thing that in terms of come across where I have concerns about have been notified to Matt Parr. I will have a conversation with Matt Parr as the lead HMIC-FRS, but I don't share them more broadly or widely with the rest of the HMIC-FRS team of inspectors.
Okay, so I think there's two elements at play here. So and I don't want to elongate this longer than needed, but quite rightly as members, we need to be confident that HMI has issued a landmark report on values and culture in fire and rescue services that set very explicit requirements on fire services, on other areas of the landscape. And it's important that we're challenging around that, but it's also important that we're accurate, because what I don't want is that you're being too challenging for yourselves, but equally we shouldn't draw false comfort. So can I just ask on that specific action? I think there are two different elements.
Yeah.
I would, and perhaps we can pick it up separately outside, but I just want confidence that you as the Chief Fire Officer have met that first obligation, which seems to me to be a reasonable ask. I think from the conversations and previous things you've given us assurance about that. And then secondly, to demonstrate what's been done on the professional standards, but then make sure we're reflecting externally where we are on that. And it's the same on items 20 and 21. So 20 is probably slightly different, but on 21, as I understand it from the previous discussion we had in April, you have a 360-degree feedback process in place. What you were looking at was the fitness for purpose of that 360-degree process. So again, I think that's a good action and it's something you should do. But if HMI asked us to evidence today that there is a 360-degree feedback process for leaders and management service, can we evidence that we did?
Feedback for a while, so we can't. I couldn't say in the last 2 years we've done 360 feedback with Jason. But
Okay.
the other challenge is that the reason we've also moved it back is the NFCC in their current culture that they've put out are looking at delivering best practice to the fire services in Q2 and Q3. So what we're trying to do is aligning a HMIC recommendation with an NFCC guidance that's going to come out and then follow from that, rather than try and eject a response.
So I'm going to be a bit chapter.
I just want to come back to the first one in terms of am I assured? It says the Chief Fire Officer should assure himself in terms of that piece about should assure themselves updates and how concerns are being handled or shared with those who have raised them, the updation accessible, all that. I am assured, and for me to say I am assured in a public domain, it's my job.
Yeah.
So it's a very public statement of everything that I know about. Am I assured that it's dealt with? Yes, I am assured. Can I give the details of all of them things and share them details? Some of them involve police investigations. No, I can't. But the point about it is, am I assured on that first piece? Yes, I am.
Okay. And that's right. All I'm saying on that is we've put into public domain a document that says we're off track.
Yes.
On a basic obligation placed on us for the 1st of June. But the second point I just want to make, and then perhaps we can bring this to a close, and I think there's a set of actions just off the plan. At the end of April, we sat in this room and we tested hard as members the confidence that you had as a senior team on meeting the targets for the 1st of June. And here we are, 2 weeks beyond that, and there was a 4 or 5 week gap to deliver those actions, and here we are, and we're showing 3 actions off track. And I think what I'm just slightly struggling with is, are those actions genuinely off track, apart from the first one, which I think we've covered? Are those actions genuinely off track? In which case, how can we sat here in April and you're confident that you were going to hit those targets? Or, and what's happened to cause that to happen? Or is this about presentational is it a presentational element about the actions? In which case, my message is that this is an important document and one that I use and will use to take comfort. So I'm going to ask is, I think probably as a team, you just need to go and reflect a little bit on the plan and how you're using the plan. Because this is something we would continue to track and hold you to. And I don't think it's unreasonable that at the end of April, we say, are you on track to hit an action at the 1st of June? To be told yes, to assume it's going to happen, not to turn up 2 weeks later and 3 actions off track. So
I'd take that in terms of that. In terms of the 360 feedback, I'd just pick up on that one. The issue that we have is, do you go off on your own as an authority? And what happens in between the updates is, the 360 is a prime example. I was on a chief fire officer's call a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about actually looking at 360 degrees, just picking up Anne-Marie's point, in terms of establishing what's best practice, how they're going to do it, a range of suppliers and all of that sort of stuff. So what happens between the reports is that sort of national piece, I think. And you're right. Now, the bit that's not been picked up in the update is that I agree, for example, on that one, that should be in the narrative to say, this is the reason why this has been elongated past the June deadline. And I think that, and in terms of the challenge, we welcome the challenge, it's a positive challenge. And I take what you said.
Yeah. So I think just to close this, so I think Councillor Darlington made the point at that meeting that actually some of the stuff in that action plan is baseline sort of core stuff, and actually there are improvements that need to be made. There are things we're doing that aren't covered in that plan, etc. And so I think that's where you're doing things like wanting to improve your 360-degree feedback process. That's a good thing and encourage it, but we need to demonstrate that those core expectations of HMI were meeting. And I think that's all that I'm saying. So I think it's probably one for you to go away as a team and just look at. So it's just conscious. I've elongated that discussion, but it's an important one. So members, we're being asked to just note the work that's been carried out to date and future work on exploring our culture. We're happy to do so. Brilliant. Thank you. That moves on to summer pressures recommendations. So this is following on from the initial paper that we had as an authority on the 12th of October after the summer pressures. We're obviously it's well timed because we, I think, have had our first wildfire already in the UK in Inverness. So just update. I think you're running us. Who's doing it?
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, I apologise because I've got different names. I apologise. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the members' time. Like the Chair has already highlighted, the initial summer pressures paper was presented to the Fire Authority on the 12th of October of 2022. This informed on the pressures experienced by Bucks Fire and Rescue Service staff between the months of July and August, where that brought record high temperatures of dry weather that presented many challenges for fire and rescue services and other emergency services across the country. So the purpose of this report is to provide a further update on the assurance, the debriefing, and to review the activities that we, as a fire and rescue service, have carried out in relation to the summer pressures, and to highlight areas for consideration which have been derived from the service-wide extreme/adverse weather survey. I'd like to highlight in Appendix 1, if I could draw everyone's attention to Appendix 1. So the extreme weather survey was aimed at capturing the views and the thoughts of all staff groups that were involved in these periods of extreme weather. And it's important to note that because this was, I reached out, I personally derived the survey, and it hit every single staff that's employed at Bucks Fire and Rescue Service, not just the operational staff, but the support staff as well, because each member within Bucks Fire, they experience these pressures in a different way. So that's important to note. We did that. We based it on, or I based it on the 9 survey headlines that are in the Appendix 1, because again, I chose those as the key areas that we may want to look at and improve in the future. So within Appendix 1, you can see a table there. So the table are the areas to consider, which I categorised into broader themes, because they reflected the recommendation from the 65 staff that responded to the survey. And within the table, you can view in your leisure, the themes are all there in their entirety, but I've included different areas to consider just as examples to highlight to the group how we are making progress against each and every theme. And to just bring it to a close before I invite any questions, again, it's important to note that Bucks Fire and Rescue staff were able to service the needs of these summer pressures incidents whilst maintaining operational fire cover throughout these periods. Some of the areas to consider may be addressed relatively rapidly and simply. However, most themes and areas highlighted will require further work, thought and financial support over a longer period, and the current capacity of departments must not be overlooked. And just to finish, every area consider, I gave an action on it to that area, and how it will be brought through the service, it will drop onto the operational assurance improvement plan. So I'll be looking for regular updates starting from next month, which goes into the operational assurance group. Then the operational assurance plan will be reported later on in the year to this group, where you'll be able to look at each and every update and how we're making progress on each and everything. So thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I've just been one part of this thinking was around them, we call it the walnut focus in Milton Keynes.
Yes.
I was there as part of the local authority centre. And whilst it was on hold very well, but there didn't seem to be a lot of overlap between the local authority and the fire service. Maybe that was just my personal view, but they seem to operate in two separate bubbles. And I'm not sure if there could be some more mileage in working closer together.
Yeah,
Just
thank you.
an observation.
No, I would agree with that because I was at Warnantry as well. So I remember it really well because it was a red hot day where Bucks Fire and Rescue staff and all emergency services worked to our capacity to bring that to a successful conclusion. One of the recommendations in the report, as you can see, is how we bring the communications, both internal and external, back into the fire and rescue service. And strangely, through the TBLRF, we have now got a representative from Bucks Fire who sits on the group. We have also
Thames Valley
the Thames Valley Local Resilience Forum.
Oh, yeah.
So that now meets every Wednesday, and once a month, every Wednesday, that meeting is attributed to summer pressures. So we've got Steve Leonard, who is our Thames Valley tactical advisor for wildfires, sits on the group, and we have a representative in service because of these recommendations. So we have a conduit now, which we didn't have last year, to bring this information back into the service. So it's well recognised, and we fixed that gap with one of the recommendations.
Thank you. Put your hand up, Councillor Darling, so I can.
It's just to further on from Donna's point and Barry's response. So the local resilience forum seems to work really well in flood instances, and I appreciate heat is a bit different than water, but they often come together now. Let's be honest. And I guess what I'm worried about with this report is it focuses very much on those big fires and the dry heat, but they're often followed by flood or flood in one part, like the big flood up in North Bucks, and then we didn't get the same rain in Milton Keynes or all of Milton Keynes. We could have had a fire incident up there. Some of it's about how do we use that local resilience forum that we have with the local authorities, the police, ambulance, the whole response to better coordinate rather than thinking this is this fire, this is this flood, this is often there. You know, some of the stuff that we do in that local resilience forum environment could apply to any of these.
Yes, that's well recognised, and it's a good point. But we already have that as standard practice.
You know, but I guess that this felt to me like a standalone from that, as opposed to saying, actually, this is what we need to ensure that we're doing already. When it goes up to Gold Command in an incident situation, I'm making sure that that's coming in, because I think at Walnut Tree, it didn't come up to Gold very quickly, did it?
No, but it came into a partner activation. Yeah. Conference, which is common practice.
But I'm just wondering, as we're looking at all of this, part of it is how we coordinate with those other bodies. When we did that fire, you know, it was quite a shocking fire, but it didn't go up to Gold Command as quickly as, let's say, we're more used to dealing with floods. That goes up really quickly. So I wonder if some of the way we look at our response to those kinds of incidents is thinking about how actually what do you call it, not accelerated,
escalate.
Yes.
Escalate, that's the word I'm looking for, thank you.
Let's give you a chance to answer. So, Barry, somebody who's, yeah. Okay, you reckon it's really challenging for me? Callum.
We're often confused, Chairman. No, I want myself baptised the Gold Commander that day, on the 19th of July to date. That's buttons into my memory, because it's testing for us in many areas, which we stood up to that challenge and delivered. For that particular incident, from my own experience, we did have very good representation from Milton Keynes Council and all agencies, and one of the parishes as well were heavily involved. As Councillor Hopkins will know, we did have very good communication network set up there, and we had what I would say is a very high level of response from all partner agencies that were working cohesively. From my experience on the day at that time from the scene, I know there were other discussions taking place from a more central location, because centrally we were looking at the impacts of all incidents across all agencies, across the whole of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes and all agencies involved. So, certainly from my experience, yes, there are a number of layers we've identified from the debrief that we've already started adopting, build upon and implement. And for that particular scenario, from my assessment, we did have a good working relationship with us.
Mick? Yes, thank you, Chairman. And yeah, thanks, Callum. Obviously, Callum was the Gold Commander on scene on the day, and I was here at headquarters. And through the Thames Valley LRF, the major incident was declared, and a strategic coordinator group was set up with representation from not just Milton Keynes Council, but Bucks Council got involved as well, because we had another incident in the south of the county. I think what that day demonstrated was that when you've got multiple major incidents at the same time, it can get stretched and communication can become quite difficult. But from a Thames Valley Local Resilience Forum perspective, all of those things happen. And it was just that whole communication piece, because the information was getting back from the incident ground, because there was that delay and we had another major incident, we're trying to get that back out again. But again, as Callum said, he had good representation on the ground from Milton Keynes Council. And actually, they did attend the strategic coordinator group, albeit virtually, because we were all virtual on that day, because we were all over the place. But just to give you some assurance that, all of those systems worked, it did happen. I think the key moving forward is around exercising as well, and then practicing that when it is calm, and we have got an exercise program in place now. And I think some members were involved in the medical exercise. And some were even rescued, I believe. But
Keith and I were never rescued.
Oh, you were safe. Oh, yeah. But from an exercise perspective, again, the Milton Keynes Council involvement was really good. But we're always looking to improve on that. And I think exercising is the key as we move forward through the LRF. And so I'll push for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stushby.
Yeah, I'll have to go over the ground. Thank you for the report. One thing I'd like to understand, and one of the things that we pop over is what take from. I think what over is those places where rural areas that's working agriculture, if you like, or it's here where you've got the fire, there is no water. And if you don't know that necessarily, because you're not monitoring every field in North Buckinghamshire, South Buckinghamshire, or whatever. So I think you need to understand have we got good internal knowledge where there are strong water sources that we can get in rural areas. There's a difference between an urban area and a rural area. That's that sometimes it's key to know where the aquifer flows are, where there are some historical pipes that go from one place to another. The other thing is it's equipment, isn't it? When you're dealing with a farm in an urban area, vehicles, we've got most vehicles hopefully when you try to get across the field, sometimes a plough field, sometimes what should be established form fire basically where standing crops for. The standing crop goes really, really very quickly, then gets into the edges and one thing another. I really got to know that those two things are being dealt with, because often in the way in the countryside you've got a solitary house in the village of that. Somebody with usually a house that I could afford, but they're not people with big houses. And it sweeps straight through the properties. I just want to know the equipment we've got and identify water sources, because it is key. Having had to identify them fast to stop on a limited scope, it's always quite difficult having to make allowances for dry weather to make sure we've got water stream or fire engines won't work without water.
So I think there were two questions there. Access to water courses in rural areas and equipment. Who's the best place to?
I'm happy to start the conversation. So on the third question about the access of water courses, we do train our staff to go out and site specifically risk assess the majority of what we may get called out to, but you're quite right, that is vast. So it's really difficult in a rural situation to find water, but we will go out to the risk areas. One, we know that there's a risk there. Again, through the work that's been undertaken in Thames Valley with Steve Leonard, who's our wildfire tactical advisor, he's been given the task of highlighting where our risks are for wildfires. Once that gets fed through the local TV LRF, we will go out to those areas and look at it. However, I can assure you that our staff are highly trained with the equipment that is on the appliances to deal with any situation where water is or it may not be. So, for example, through this report and through work that's been going on for the past few months, we've purchased new equipment, which are 4x4 equipment, to go into the second question as well. So we've purchased or we've repurposed 2 of our 4x4 vehicles. So they are currently with the supplier, Anglo, where they are building and looking at different suspensions, different tyres. They are integrating a misting system onto the back of a 4x4 for exactly the point we're talking about. If we had a field fire or we were into a rural area where we didn't have water, we will in the next couple of weeks have 2 appliances which will be able to get us to the scene of operations very quickly with water, because that was recognised through this report. How do we get water to the areas where we haven't got water? Then on top of the 2 4x4 appliances, we are repurposing a current appliance. So a current appliance which we have in service has been strategically placed at West Ashland, and work is undergoing to train all the firefighters on this vehicle, again with the sole purpose of getting firefighting equipment and staff to the scene of operations where water may be a problem. So I can assure you we are trained to get water to where we need it, although very difficult.
Is there any mapping? You have access to maps of water business, because one knows a little bit about. So sometimes there are water sources that nobody knows about, but they are redundant sources of water, where we used to have some on our farm, those wells, redundant water sources, but they used to provide water. It's always good to know where those redundant resources are, because at times when you're in the area, you can go and get into those, because they're not being used currently, because they don't meet regulations for treating water. It might be worth making sure we have the mapping. Sometimes those key questions at the time we do it here, unlike the south, perhaps going to put a fire out with a slow spread it works with a very dull way of doing it. But
okay, I'm really conscious. I think we've got the point. I'm just conscious we've got quite a lot still to get through. Water courses mapping. Perhaps one. Have you got it or take away? Or
So our mobile data terminal have hydrant mapping on them, so we can locate the hydrants. You're right, it does become challenging in some rural areas where the hydrants aren't so prolific. The mapping would also show you access to open water supplies if they're on them. Granted, some of those might be seasonal. So when we get to the incidents, we do rely on some local knowledge and liaison with people who are on scene. We might be able to tap into those wells and things that you mentioned that we might be able to use. Other than that, Barry's absolutely right. In terms of our site-specific risk information, we've developed that over recent years to include wildland areas as a risk, so that we're better prepared for access of those sites and how we would deal with them in the event of an incident there.
Thank you. Chief Officer.
Just pick up on that. Under the 2004 Fire and Rescue Services Act, Fire and Rescue Services have to do 72Ds, so they have to identify where water sources are, which we do on a regular basis. The other thing which we just need to pick up on is that we've engaged with the NFU as well, National Farmers Union, and we've also incorporated from that feedback some adapters which allow us now to access water supplies which are currently on farms as well, on all the appliances as well. So we've taken that feedback, and we've also engaged on a prevention basis with the NFU in terms of with farmers to say, actually, how do you limit the spread of wildfire, or how do you reduce the wildfires in summer conditions? So we've done a lot of prevention work with them as well.
Thank you. So just a couple of things for me. So when we first had the summer incidents, from that moment onwards, and then it was reiterated in the October meeting, members were really clear that we wanted the service to make sure that it was equipped and able to cope with any future events. And I know there was a really rigorous process of learning from it, etc. But if we were to read this, if you were to read this report cold, you might look at it and go, we're sitting here in the middle of June, and there are a number of actions that are outstanding where we're going through either growth bid submission or it's being part of a broader review. So some good examples are you might look at toilet facilities of female hygiene products to be made available as standard, and that's going through a growth bid, and yet that feels like quite a straightforward thing to be doing. Similarly, there are the summer uniforms being wrapped into a wider uniform review. So I've got two questions. One is, can you just give us as members assurance that we're not allowing bureaucracy and process to slow down, just doing sensible, reasonable things that we should be doing for firefighters to equip them through the summer? Because there is a risk that it looks like we're taking lots of things through process that actually we should be trying to do relatively quickly. But I suppose the main question to take from this session is, as we sit here today, how well equipped and how ready is Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service to deal with a repeat of the events, or indeed worse events than we had last year?
You want to say the first part and I'll say the second part?
Yes, sorry, I'm focusing on the second part there. So yes, since the inception of this table, things have moved on. So the growth bid process came to a conclusion 2 weeks ago through Business Transformation Board. The growth bid that you're alluding to there has been approved. However, behind the scenes, a lot of work has already been going on. So yes, I can assure you the toilet facilities for areas that will go over the welfare facilities so people can get changed. Further work on coolants, on rehydration. In short, a lot of work is going on. So when this growth bid got approved 2 weeks ago, we can move very, very quickly. Just before the chief comes in and I allow him to speak, yes, I am assured as the training and insurance manager that we do massive work behind the scenes that I know you're aware of through the OAIP and through every single incident we go to, we feedback, we monitor, and it's my job to assure that we're doing it in a good way. Yes, we do. It's going to be an ever-evolving beast if we get better and better and better. But as what we saw last year, we did cope with all the pressures, although it was hard work, although it pushed us to our capabilities. We've grown since then. So in short, when we have our wildfire, because it will come this year, yes, you will get our firefighters going up there, very well equipped, very well informed, very well trained for any eventuality.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, on the one specific point you picked up around sort of the uniform aspects or the PPE aspects, this is a national issue because of supply and demand and supply chains. So, services that ordered wildfire PPE 2 years ago have still not yet received their full sort of quota. I know Surrey have only just received theirs, and we've been working hard with Surrey on what that looks like as well. So it isn't just we've been dragging our heels, we've been working hard, but there is a big supply chain issue on that. But that's not to say we're not pushing that forward as well. So we are working on that.
Yeah, and just to come back on that, it comes into the contaminants issue. There's so many more issues around the PPE and the contaminants issue, everything that's gone through on the picture as well. But I can assure you, I say within the directorate and within the action on for this is a hot topic that we will fix.
Just on the assurance piece, am I assured that work has been undergone? Yes, I am. Am I sure we're progressing? Yes, I am. There is something about processes and procedures. I take that point in terms of we move forward. The other thing as well for us is that we're employing more staff now, which will help this year. There's no doubt about it, to go from 266 to up with nearly 300. That will make a difference as we move forward. So I'm sure as I possibly can. We coped last year. It was a difficult day and difficult days actually, but we're in a better position now than we were last year. I will continue to progress that as we move forward.
Okay, good. Well, I think from all of us, we hope we don't have a repeat, but our sort of best wishes is the right phrase, but we hope that the team are able to cope with the demand. Our members happy to note the report. Thank you. Moves on to performance management. This is the regular update on performance management. Just Craig, want to take us to the highlights you want to draw to our attention?
So, good morning members. This is the fourth time we've had the pleasure of sharing this with you, the performance report for 22-23. With this in mind, the commentary within the report has been completed slightly differently to reflect both the performance in the quarter, for quarter 4, and the performance over the year. As in previous quarters, we've highlighted and provided commentary on measures to enable better understanding of captured outcomes, while also reflecting on previous reports. Before opening the floor to any questions, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank members for their continued support and feedback in relation to this report. While many improvements to the report were made during the year, there were several suggestions that we have decided to hold until the 23-24 report. These will be implemented for the next fire authority meeting. I appreciate there's a lot of information within the report, so rather than me focus on certain measures, give the script, I'll ask members if they have any questions or observations.
Thank you. Questions, comments? So Donald.
I just have one really, on GP 1.10. And given what we
Give us a page number if you've got it.
page number 157. It relates to the number of grievances and discipline cases, and we've got it marked ahead. And I'm just wondering, given that we're trying to get more people to speak up, whether this is the right way of reflecting this. I mean, obviously, we don't want lots of complaints and grievances, but and discipline cases, but at the same time, we're also encouraging more of that to come forward. So that makes it quite difficult then to say what is the right RAG rating. Because in some ways, if we were rating the Speak Out campaign and those numbers went up, that would be a green. But in this sense, so I'm just highlighting that there's a conflict in this particular measure.
We have that in a lot of measures. What is good in performance is, yes, there's a lot of things like health and safety is not a great example. We want people to highlight the misses more. Does that equal a less safer environment, or does it mean more important? So I think it is very difficult. I think what we have to do is just put where we expect to be or where we've been in the past, whether it's different to that. Maybe we could look at the colour code slightly, but it is difficult for a couple of subjects like this.
Or even in the narrative, in the description, maybe even in there So
one of the recommendations that came from the previous authority, which were introduced to the report, as in the next one, is better narrative about each of the measures. So there will be an appendix at the back that has a better description. So in there would be a great list of action.
So it seems to me that one specifically, there are two different drivers there. So a grievance is different to a disciplinary, and I think we're wrapping them together. And I think it's probably a good case we're actually tracking a green, red, amber against a volume isn't helpful. One of the things I just wonder more widely is, having done a year of this, whether it's worth with the lead members just perhaps going through and looking at, are they the right measures, and how else might we do them to refresh it? But I think it's a good observation from Councillor Darlington. Any other comments, Councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, just a little explanation of non-domestic page 143 for the chair, and a non-domestic which is 1.1201, and the figure looks quite tracking up what it read, and a little explanation around that. The non-domestic side, though that's on page 4, the same sort of tracking, but not as an increase. The domestic fires, non-domestic fires, tracking that as well, which shows, that I'm misunderstanding it, that means that there are no more increases, which your direction is good. Is there anything around those that I'm reading wrong, or is that just what you were saying? But I think we need to know, because that shows that there's sometimes these things where there's a drop in demand, they seem to be going back the other way again.
I'm glad you highlighted this, because this is a great example of showing how this report works really well and how it works, and hopefully, and also how we need to improve it. So this measure for non-domestic properties, we include everything that's not for non-domestic. That now, on reflection, is probably not the best decision we've made. What happened from this report, because this report we spotted that quite early on, we went away and did another report that would, since that more in depth, which was the great use of this report. It gave us a highlight of these looked at. We identified that most of those non-domestic fires were prison related. So we are now working with the prisons to try and understand why, how we can reduce it, all that sort of thing. But I won't go into details why it's happening in the prison, but it is. And then now maybe in the future, we then look at that and say, actually, we split out prisons as a separate, as a measure, have non-domestic properties excluding prisons as a measure. Because all of that increase is due to an increase in prison-related crimes.
Thank you. I understand the complicated. My late wife used to work in the prison service, so that's very complicated. We work in
Thank you. So not seeing any other hands. So firstly, on behalf of members, can I say a thank you and well done to you, Greg, and to Anne-Marie, because the report has improved enormously quickly over the year, and actually has been a really important part of our scrutiny. And it's a good opportunity to challenge ourselves to keep making it even better. It would be remiss not to note, I know we've already talked about the whole time numbers, but just to also note the fantastic progress on the fire and wellness visits. Both, we've had a lot of debates through this report about managing quantity and quality, and actually really good work to do both. So well done on that. So now to move to the challenge for the year ahead, which is twofold for me. So we have got to do something to improve the Great Place to Work performance. This is showing appraisals, fewer appraisals completed this year than last. It's showing some improvement in mandatory e-learning, but still some way to go. And so could I ask that those elevate up as the priority focus, because I think we all agree they're key parts of some of the culture indicators as well. And then the second one is we absolutely have to get some climate change metrics in place on page 168. I've got a year now without them in place, so it'd just be good to understand what the plan is on that. Yeah.
Just on the, sorry, I mean,
Do you want to go first?
Well, I will.
Okay, if you can start kids first.
Just to say, there is a paper coming to the executive in July, which Mark and I have been working on, which we will continue to work on before we get to July. So it's very much work in progress, but certainly not forgotten. Indeed, it is a priority, not just this authority, but all of our partner authorities as well. And Mark has done, and the team are doing some great work on that. I have the report indeed. It's never far from my side, and we'll report further in July.
Yeah, within that paper, Councillor Hopkins mentioned, we have set the initial carbon emissions baseline, so that will come to the executive in July, and I'll report it as part of that. On its own, it doesn't mean anything, but gives us a baseline to measure future improvements against. There's still some work to be done on the recycling benchmark, so the carbon emissions one is definitely in hand. That's all very smoothly.
Great, thank you.
I'll just comment on the appraisal part as well. One of the benefits of having this report, we bring members to highlight that quite early on. So already there are plans in place to improve those areas you've mentioned. So this year will hopefully get something much better.
Good, thank you. Any other questions, comments? In which case, are we happy to note the report? Thank you. Which brings us to our final item, which is a presentation we're going to get on from Steve on recent changes to fire safety, building safety legislation and regulations. Sorry,
I was just going to suggest if Councillor Darlington and Councillor Stachby perhaps move to the chairs to the side, because it's going to be a slide presentation.
Is it different? Sorry, is it different slides to the?
No different.
Oh, so we're fine then. Yeah, let's stick.
If you're happy.
Yeah, we'll stick with this.
I'm really happy to leave them in space for.
No, it's fine. I think we've got the papers, so it's fine. Yeah, don't worry.
Do you want me to put it on screen?
Yeah, good try. I mean, my view is irrelevant. It's going to go on the screen. So yeah, it's for the YouTube viewers. Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry, we're doing it for the YouTube watchers apparently. So if we could just create some space, and then
If you need to go, Craig, unless you want to do fire protection.
No, I'm not fire protection. I'll make space on that.
Selfless.
I'm probably not prepared yet.
just whilst the logistics are being done, just members. So I know members that will have done the LGA course, which I highly recommend for those that haven't done it, will understand that the changes that are happening in this area are really significant for us as members, and for our role and our scrutiny. So as well as the presentation that Steve's going to give us, which I have asked for a member training session on it, which will be put in place, because it is important that we understand these changes as a group. So please keep your eye out for that. If you, oh, they're okay now, are they? Are they okay with it?
They've got their.
Right, check. Just check.
Thank you. I'm excited to stand up to everybody this evening. I was saying. So, as the chairman's really pointed out, this was a request following from a couple of authority meetings ago around some of the work we've brought around some of the protection recommendations that came out of Grenfell, and maybe that would be beneficial for us just to get some understanding of the legislation changes. So we're looking at those. That works. So these are the new legislations and regulations that have come in over the last 2 years. So we have moved on to page 2. Those are on the screen. So the first one is the Fire Safety Act that came in the end of 2021. Fire safety regulations, or Fire Safety England regulations, they came in at the beginning of this year, in January, and we'll talk about those. And Fire Safety Act, or the Building Safety Act, which is 2022, I know members are interested in, and we can have some discussion on that. That comes formally into statutory presentation in October. So that actually comes formally into statutory books in October. So that's been some work already on that. Right, so you can see that we've had some changes to the Fire Safety Act, and that effectively, sorry, I'm back to it. Right, so that made some amendments and some changes to Fire Safety Order, which the protection team are fully familiar with, and we audit on the Fire Safety Order. In essence, it clarified some points around that, which were just where the obligations are from a commercial perspective or from a protection statutory responsibility, and they've evolved around the door to the flat, the doors within the common areas, and some of the external work inside the buildings. Obviously, from Grenfell, you would understand that a lot of fire travel came up on the outside of the building. So if you look to external cladding, the impact it might have with balconies and that kind of thing. So as part of an audit process that we will now do, that has kind of just been clarified within the Fire Safety Act, just to include within any audit process that the Fire Risk Service does, to include those specific areas. So as we've done moving forward then, is we just sought some clarity within our teams, that duty officers and group commanders and principal officers are aware of the legislation change. Again, it's just for information at this stage, but they need to be aware of our audit process. We've also had a discussion with prevention teams, because obviously we do an awful lot of prevention activity around high-rise buildings, and anybody living in a high-rise building will obviously be on edge on these things. So the prevention team have been made aware of the changes just to create that clarity and understanding for residents around what they're being expected to know from that. And obviously the last bit of the day is just at your request, just letting members aware of the legislation changing with regards to that. So moving on then, so the Fire Safety England regs. These regulations were introduced again, following on from Grenfell. All of these legislational changes are Grenfell. These came into force on the 23rd January 2023. And they proposed additional measures on responsible people in multi-occupied buildings. This is quite a lot for high-rise buildings and RPs to take on board. They've been fairly slow to take on some of this. And I'm aware that we've had ongoing consultations on the various discussions at a national level about how we might report on who are being engaged in this kind of activity. So that work's going on as we speak. The regulations depend on height. So all buildings, and members will know from the brief, there's a, and again, just so you're aware, there's a kind of a handout form just to let you know near the back about the specifics of that. So all buildings must have fire safety instructions, and the RP must inform all residents of those instructions. That revolves around how to make a call to the fire service, how to ensure that they know what to do should there be a fire. We're also then looking, the next one is the fire door information. Again, it's been unclear, residents have never been fully informed. We don't think about the impact of a fire door, so they will wedge it open, for example, and the impact that has on smoke travel, potentially having a conflict with people leaving buildings. So again, that's incumbent on the RP or the responsible person to ensure that all residents are fully aware of the importance of fire doors and their purpose, and to ensure that they're kept closed, or at least on a condition where they can close should they be required. That's the same with all buildings, any on multi-occupied buildings. If we then jump to a level, we're looking at height here. So residential buildings over 11 metres have an additional requirement. They are around fire doors. So for all, we spoke this briefly about this, so doors to flats, so the external door to a flat should be a fire door, and they should be inspected once every year. And the common access doors in common areas should be inspected quarterly. Again, within statutory or legal parlance, best endeavours. So we have to be a bit mindful about how we really inspect on that, but that's the expectation. And then the big one is, as you might think, the highest risk for us are buildings over 18 metres or 7 stories. So again, it's all the previous recommendations that we've just been speaking about for all buildings. They are all, the RP is also incumbent on informing us and letting us have building plans, informing us of the external wall system for their buildings, and letting us know of all the lifts and other key firefighting equipment they have. They should be installing secure information boxes, and they should be ensuring that their wayfinder finding signage is appropriate for the building. We can go into more detail on that, but what in essence it means for the fire service is that we had to have some way of electronically receiving information from responsible people around the external wall systems, building plans, and part of the key firefighting equipment, their obligation was to let us know if there's any failings of those that they can't rectify in 24 hours. So we now have on our website electronic Microsoft forms that allows these responsible people to contact us, let us know what's there, let us know if there's an issue with firefighting equipment, and let us know exactly what they understand their externals. Briefly mentioned that that's quite a useful little bit of information, and it's quite a good form. It is an illustrative perspective, but it does give you quite a nice idea and a nice understanding of what's expected of the responsible person for each of the hypothetical question. So we need to consider, so we've talked a little bit around this, so there's things that we need to do. We probably need to just look at how we make further demonstrations to the responsible people. We've written them once, we've phoned them up, we've emailed them. We've got to take the next step, which is to get a little bit heavy-handed if they're not taking their responsibility up forward. And that's something we're looking at doing. And again, we're looking at trying to just involve in consultation nationally about how the best way forward that is. And again, just informing those departments. So again, the prevention department just making sure that the prevention team are fully aware of these so that they can inform people in their flats. Duty officers and group commanders, again, from an operational perspective, just so we have that information which within the firefighting equipment not be working. And then other departmental managers as required. So lastly, and the one we're still not yet fully come into force, is the Building Safety Act. This provides a new regulator, which is the Health and Safety Executive, requires the health and safety executive as a regulator to establish an understanding of buildings. The aim is to secure the safety of people in and around buildings with respect to the risk arising from them, to improve the standards of buildings, ensuring the safety of those in high risk buildings, and again, it will be those who are in 18-metre buildings and above, and improving the competence of those who are assessing them. So you may or may not be aware they are respecting their authority. So we go through planning and all these kind of things. It's not entirely clear what the competency is required for some of the people involved in planning. So it's about creating that, having a full understanding of what that looks like, being able to challenge people on their competency as part of that, and setting clear understandings and guidance around that. There are a number of processes at the moment. So as part of the Building Safety Act, there are what we call gateways. And I'll briefly explain. Gateway 1 has been going for a little while. It's around the application for planning. And it's all around informing the regulator of what's expected within a planning application and including fire statements. So we have an understanding of what they're going to do, access, lights, drive-bys, all those things. Where we've previously not really been statutory consultees. We've been aware of it, but until under the fire safety order, we can't really statutorily get involved. It seems occupied, which makes it a little bit grey, which is in essence the reason for the legislation in the first place. Gateway 2, which comes into force in October, as we've mentioned, requires the regulator to check on the building control application, and then the construction of the building. And Gateway 3 is where we get a little bit more involved locally, will be around the occupancy of the building itself. And that's where the fire service is going to join up towards the end. As part of the building safety regulators, the fire service do get involved. They become part of a multidisciplinary team. So we haven't supplied anybody, but Berkshire have on behalf of Thames Valley. They supply a fire or a protection officer to join those multidisciplinary teams and ensure that they've got all of the required skills from a fire perspective. So joined up process should hopefully improve things. We talked about, the Act applies to new and existing buildings above 18 metres. So at the moment, it is going to deal with 18-metre buildings. If you look at what their anticipations are, and I can briefly show you the figures, they're looking at figures of like about 250 buildings per year going through transition at the moment, 400 new builds a year, 180 major refurbs and 350 a year refurbs. So we're looking at quite a lot of activity going on. So I suspect we're not going to come away from that, particularly in high-risk area at the moment. But it's important that we understand that. The intention is to put residents at the heart of the building safety, clarify who is responsible for fires and building safety throughout the life cycle of the building. That's going to be difficult if they change the responsible person and change the owner of the building. Often people take all the information with them and nobody fully understands the history or some of the impact of that. There will also be some additional approval processes, and we spoke about the competency for high-risk buildings and changes to liability in relation to the construction of new buildings, which have direct action according to laws. Things like mediation, some of the new legislation around mediation that we could perhaps adopt if it seems to be an appropriate way forward to move things on. That's very brief, and I've taken up too much of your time, and I suspect there will be a number of questions around building safety, so I think that's one of your concerns. And the chairman, I know, is keen to look at a more broader, perhaps, workshop around some of the increased legislation, because I understand it's probably that's where you're going, what this means.
Thank you.
So I'll take questions if that's okay.
Yeah, we've got Councillor Hopkins first.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. Very informative, of course. I think I know the answer to one or two of these, but I will ask them anyway.
Okay,
This is residential. We're not talking about commercial.
No, sorry, that wasn't clear. All this legislation is around
buildings that are at least a minimum of 2 residential properties within the building. So you're entirely right. And in most cases, certainly with the Building Safety Act, at least 18 weeks.
Thank you for that. Then there's the planning implications of all of this. There's a movement in our part of the world for what some people describe as a sort of MK Manhattan.
Yes.
A movement towards many more high-rise residential developments. That would involve us as a fire authority getting much more involved at the ground floor, for the better way of putting it, in planning applications. Is that something we're looking to do? And hang on, and you also mentioned the sort of the expertise that's required. Will we be looking to employ within this authority a planning expert, as it were, whose his or her main job would be simply to respond to and advise on new planning applications for high-rise buildings? And what are the budgetary implications for that? Not only of that, but also, do we have the equipment moving forward to deal with, God forbid, a fire on the 27th floor of a new building in Milton Keynes? That equipment, I presume, would be very expensive and very sophisticated.
Yes, let me be able to overview the department. I've some of the questions in there. I'll try and remember what the first one was. So we at the moment do get involved, absolutely. So we have been and sat and engaged some of the bits you're talking about. We've had numerous consultations with the planners and the approved inspectors, and all that work is going ahead, not despite, but prior to Building Safety Act. So that work carries on as normal. So we have responded to the best of my knowledge to, I think, 3 occasions, and they have taken on board some of our suggestions, and they are suggestions, and we've spoken about statutory consultation, but they have taken on board some of our suggestions, and they do appreciate what we have and what we can offer from that perspective. So that's happening already. In answer to your second question, we have somebody going through, we have a number of level 5 fire engineers at the moment. We have 2, we're looking at creating a 3rd, and we have somebody who's taking a degree in level 6 fire engineering. And that's the bit that we all aspire to. And certainly at a regional level, I think there are only 3 level 7s. But at a regional level, we're looking at creating those level 6s close by. So we have somebody going through that process now. So as in a perfect world, as Milton Keynes comes online and creates your Manhattan skyline, if that's what's going to happen, we should have somebody who will absolutely be able to feed into all of that locally. But we have that right, we can do it. We can do it regionally as well. That's, we have access to level 6 fire engineers. So that's perfect. And there was one final.
The other thing was really to do with looking one into the future. Do we have the equipment which can deal with a fire?
So the answer is, if we follow the legislation, you don't need the equipment, because you don't. There's not going to be. The issue is either they stay put in some safe, or they get out and they're still safe. If we're in a situation where that's gone wrong, we're in a whole world of difference. So then we are looking to ensure that the legislation and all this is involved around ensuring that there is no need for that immediate, other than the compartment on fire, there's no need for dealing with fire progression everywhere else in the building. And that's what the modern buildings want.
Councillor Darlington.
Thank you very much for this. As the cabinet member that was responsible for some of this stuff, I'm very happy that you are, because it made no sense whatsoever to have these split responsibilities, and you were the ones with the expertise, not the council. So I'm really pleased that the legislation has done that. A couple of things, just to pick up the planning point. We are in a weird situation where the council, as a planning authority, and this would be the same for Bucks, is not allowed to reject applications on the basis that they don't meet building control.
Yeah.
Much of this is building control regs. Now, we're not allowed to turn down an application now that we know isn't going to fulfill these new building control regs. So it'd be really helpful. Fire authority also made that point, because we are continually making that point, not just to new applications coming in, but to those that are being done under the, what is it called, permission to retrofit, whatever, whether it's an office, permitted development, where they're taking office buildings and really, I mean, there's a lot of concern from a health and safety perspective.
Yeah.
So we have, under the planning regs, very little ability to do anything about it. And it seems like the left hand and the right hand in government have no idea what it, you know, what's going on there. If we're pushing for increased building safety, we should be ensuring not only do you have the regs, we have the regs. So that's just my first thing. So the second thing that I think is really important is who, you are now responsible for enforcement.
We are still locally, yes, we still locally.
So we continue to have buildings in Milton Keynes, and I'm sure they count in bucks, where the owners of the buildings have done nothing. In the meantime, we have leaseholders in those buildings who are unable to sell, unable to remortgage, unable to get out, whatever. So I guess the question is, how much resource do we currently have, and how much resource in the future do we have that we will be able to enforce against those landowners, or what do you call the freehold owners, to do the works that they have supposedly in this meeting with Michael Gove agreed to do. But we've got hundreds, if not down over 1,000 tenants, particularly in the hub, you know, with the division building stuff. We're literally stuck and have no idea of any dates of when work is being done. So I guess I want to make sure that we're well resourced enough to do it, and that you feel you've got enough powers to actually get out and do it. And then we can talk later about when you're going to do it.
Okay, well, I take your first point, you know, I did have an answer to it. Oh, yes, I'm going to see it. So, as part of the regulator, or the regulator's responsibility as from October, as part of any application, there is an expectation, I'm quoting here, the application does not meet the functional requirements, there will be a hard stop, which the project will not be able to progress. So there are a number of expectations around that. The regulator will have a position to hard stop.
But we need the regulator to hard stop.
Yes.
We can't, as a planning authority, turn it down on that basis.
No, but that would be the regulator's
I knew that.
Let's let everyone say it.
In answer to your second question, which is why we're looking at options around mediation, again, I think that's what came out of Gove's suggestion moving forward, is that's an option for us, if that's what we need to do.
On the enforcement of current.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, we're now years on and people's lives have been destroyed. I think we need something a little firmer than mediation to get these, because they're just dragging their feet and nothing's been.
To be fair, I don't think Steve can fix. Let's
So in some ways, Steve can fix, because that's not him personally, but you know, our organization can fix, because we've been given the organization has been given the powers to it. And I guess I want to ensure that we, BFRS, BMK, BFRS, is prepared to actually go in there. We know which buildings they are. I can give you a list of them right now and actually take action as soon as possible, because you said there's no one else to ask to do it. But it is up to this organization to do it.
So that work is, and I guess there is an element of frustration, certainly with tenants, but that work is leaseholders. That work is part of what we're doing. There's been some working towards that. That's ongoing as we speak, and we're looking at options for that. But that's around some of the work that until quite recently, there wasn't an answer to getting that work retrospectively done. And that's what we're looking around mediation and how to bring that in and improve upon our way of doing it. So that just clarifies.
Thank you.
I can give you some places to find it.
So,
Yes.
so I have Councillor Stutchby next.
Yeah, well, listen to that. I think that when I heard the word mediate and negotiate in a which is about how to safety, I cringe, because we didn't mediate, negotiate, and that's how we got in the position we are today with tragedies. The thing that I would like to see some clarity, when legislation drafted, it should sort of be extremely good thing to do, to actually look for what the signals are of what the problem is going to be going forward. If you make the adjustments, all you need to do them, you don't have to do the rapid thing afterwards. And the word all multiple occupied residence buildings, if anyone who knows anything about members around it, there will get things on planning applications, growth through multiple HMOs. Yeah. Because of the economy, because people need to live somewhere, the growth in HMOs is rapid. And they are retrofitted buildings quite often, and they're not exactly to licensing policy, unless you're in Oxford, where it's Article 4 directive policy, where they have a whole policy around HMO, which is quite stringent. I'm concerned that this, you could tell me, the Act doesn't recognise that. The economics driving people into HMOs, wages, the fact that they can't afford rent. So this is a growth industry. Does the Act recognise that? Then got it.
So it accepts that that's multi-occupied building, absolutely, as you stated. A lot of this is focusing around the higher risk buildings. And the HMOs, we don't directly regulate the HMOs because that's a local authority thing. So we have, and we work with, and we will supply relevant skills and experience, and we will work with the local authority to take things forward from that perspective. Mediation is a little bit interesting because whilst we supply the legislative things with common areas, they have responsibility to regulate and deal with that.
It says all multi-occupied residential buildings. So I was really hopeful that somebody draft legislation would be forward thinking, but never mind.
Just conscious of times where we've run. So I've got Councillor McLean next.
Thanks, Steve, for the presentation. When you're going through it, I noticed the bit that at one point you said that the building RP is supposed to let the fire service know if there's a problem.
Yes.
Who checks when they're checking whether there is a problem? Is that our responsibility?
So no, none of this. So the responsible person is the responsible person. We would, when we become aware of something, we'll obviously chase up on it. But absolutely, the responsible person from a legal perspective is responsible. So that's their responsibility.
So that I think is answering that we have no liability. If we don't check that they haven't done, then we're not
We've
liable.
given them the scope to inform us. We've told them that they need to do X. They're liable if they haven't.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Chair.
And then finally, what Councillor Owen.
Thank you for the report. I think mine is more of a general question, really. Do you see the need for a video promotion to inform and empower residents on what to expect from buildings, from disorders, wherever, but also on a part of responsibility to themselves and others? So I'm just thinking, you said you're putting residents, or the report says putting residents at the heart of the building. Should we also be looking at informing them what they should be expecting and what is expected of them?
It's a very good question, and it's something actually you brought up, and I'm now thinking that maybe some of the next step we can do. The heart of the building bit was about the regulator, and that comes in October. That may be something we can look at and we work nationally, and maybe something the NFCC, National Fire Chiefs Council, will be looking at to promote nationally. I will certainly bring it up to the point minutes, very useful possible, so we can do it.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Steve. It's really helpful. As I say, we'll do a members workshop on it, and I think we'll separately look a bit later in the year whether we do one on protection overall as well. So on the basis there is no further business, can I thank everybody for your time? Close the meeting there and wish you a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Hey,